Something is organizing over the Central Pacific. And for Hawaii, the next several days could become increasingly important. A tropical disturbance known as Invest 93C is being closely watched as it develops more than 1,000 miles east-southeast of the Hawaiian Islands. Right now, it is not yet a named tropical storm. It does not yet have the clearly defined circulation of a mature tropical cyclone. But forecasters say conditions are favorable for development, and the system is moving in a direction that could bring significant weather impacts to Hawaii by the end of the week and into the weekend. The big question is no longer simply whether this disturbance will develop. The much more important question is where it will organize, how strong it will become, and exactly how close its center will pass to the Hawaiian Islands. Those details could make an enormous difference. A relatively small change in track could separate a period of rough weather from a much more serious tropical cyclone event. The National Weather Service office in Honolulu says a tropical depression or tropical storm is expected to form as the system moves generally northwestward across the Central Pacific. That forecast has immediately placed Hawaii into a period of heightened awareness. But there is something important to understand. Invest 93C is still in the development stage. That means the exact center of circulation has not been firmly established. And until that center becomes better organized, computer forecast models can have difficulty determining the storm's future path. This is one reason residents should be careful when looking at individual forecast model images circulating online. One model may show the center crossing directly over an island. Another may show it passing south. Another may keep the strongest winds offshore. At this stage, none of those single solutions should be treated as certainty. The National Weather Service is specifically telling people not to focus on one model run or one projected track. Instead, forecasters are watching the overall trend. And right now, the overall trend suggests that Hawaii could experience meaningful impacts. Those impacts may begin even before the center of the storm gets close. One of the first concerns could actually be fire weather. That may sound surprising. People normally associate a tropical storm with heavy rain and flooding. But Hawaii could face a very different problem before the tropical moisture arrives. As the developing system approaches, winds are expected to increase. At the same time, relatively dry and stable air could remain over parts of the islands. Strong winds combined with low humidity can create dangerous wildfire conditions. That possibility is especially significant for Hawaii, where dry vegetation and strong winds can quickly turn a small fire into a fast-moving emergency. The National Weather Service says fire weather concerns could increase on Friday. Then the situation may begin to change. As the tropical system gets closer, moisture could increase dramatically. Heavy rainfall may become one of the biggest threats. Hawaii's mountains can make tropical rainfall especially dangerous. Moist air moving into the islands is forced upward by steep terrain. As that air rises, it cools and produces additional rain. Meteorologists call this orographic enhancement. In simple terms, mountains can squeeze additional rainfall out of an already moisture-rich tropical air mass. That means some communities on east and southeast-facing slopes could receive much more rain than areas only a short distance away. If heavy rain repeatedly moves over the same locations, streams can rise quickly, roads can flood, low-lying areas can become dangerous, and flash flooding can develop with relatively little warning. That is why the exact track matters so much. A storm passing slightly south of the island chain could place Hawaii on one side of the circulation. A storm tracking directly through the islands could produce an entirely different wind and rainfall pattern. And a system passing somewhat farther away could still create dangerous surf and powerful winds. In fact, large surf may become one of the most widespread effects regardless of whether the center makes landfall. As Invest 93C strengthens, it is expected to generate a large easterly swell. That swell can travel far from the storm itself. The National Weather Service says surf along east-facing shores could build from east to west as the system approaches. Warning level surf of 15 feet or higher may be possible into the weekend. For beaches that normally attract swimmers, surfers, fishermen, and tourists, those conditions could become extremely dangerous. Large breaking waves can sweep people from rocks and beaches. Powerful currents can develop. Low-lying coastal areas can also experience flooding or wave run-up, and conditions can deteriorate before skies overhead appear especially threatening. That is an important point for visitors. A tropical cyclone does not need to pass directly over a beach to create dangerous ocean conditions. The waves can arrive many hours before the center of the system. Wind is another major uncertainty. Forecasters expect winds to strengthen as the system moves closer, but the direction and strength of those winds will depend heavily on where the storm tracks and how strong it becomes. Even if the center remains away from the islands, the circulation around the system could still produce damaging gusts. Strong winds can bring down tree limbs. They can damage power lines. They can create difficult driving conditions, and they can make coastal waters extremely hazardous. For an island state, that combination matters. Hawaii cannot simply move large numbers of people hundreds of miles inland. There is no inland escape route. Residents and emergency officials must prepare locally. That makes advanced preparation especially important. There is also another interesting question surrounding Invest 93C. What will the storm eventually be called? If the system develops into a named tropical storm in the Central Pacific Basin, the next available name is Lala. Lala is the first name on the Central Pacific list for the 2026 season. But there is a geographical complication. The boundary between the eastern and central Pacific hurricane basins lies at 140 degrees west longitude. If the system becomes a tropical storm while it remains east of that boundary, it would receive a name from the Eastern Pacific list. Local meteorologists have pointed out that the storm could therefore receive a different name depending on exactly where its circulation becomes organized. That means people in Hawaii may soon be hearing the name Lala, but they could potentially hear another name first. The name, however, is not what determines the danger. The track, intensity, size, rainfall, wind field, and ocean conditions are what matter. Hawaii has dealt with tropical cyclone threats before, but direct strikes by powerful hurricanes are relatively uncommon. Most tropical systems passing through the Central Pacific remain far enough away that the islands experience limited effects. That can create a dangerous sense of familiarity. People may see another tropical disturbance on a weather map and assume it will also turn away. But every system is different, and forecasters are taking this one seriously because the projected movement brings it toward the vicinity of Hawaii during the coming days. Local forecasts suggest that the first major changes could begin late in the week. Friday could bring increasing winds and elevated fire danger. Surf may begin building. Then the weekend could become much wetter and windier depending on the final track. Some computer models have been bringing the system toward the Big Island late Friday or Saturday before carrying its influence westward across the island chain. But those model projections are not an official landfall forecast. That distinction is extremely important. Forecast confidence generally improves once a tropical cyclone develops a well-defined center. When the center becomes clearer, meteorologists can better determine the system's movement. They can also begin issuing more precise forecasts of wind speed, rainfall, and potential hazards. Until then, the forecast will continue to change. A shift of 50 or 100 miles may not look dramatic on a large Pacific map. For Hawaii, it could completely change which islands receive the strongest winds and heaviest rain. That is why people across the state should monitor updates, not just residents of the Big Island. The Hawaiian Islands stretch across hundreds of miles. A system approaching from the southeast may affect the Big Island first, but depending on its movement, Maui County, Oahu, and eventually Kauai could also experience impacts, and the effects will not necessarily be identical on every island. Terrain plays a huge role in Hawaii's weather. Mountain ranges can accelerate winds through gaps and valleys. They can enhance rainfall on one side of an island while creating much drier conditions on the other. That means two communities on the same island may experience dramatically different weather from the same tropical system. There is another factor to watch. Ocean temperatures in the region can support tropical development. Warm ocean water provides energy for tropical cyclones, but warm water alone does not guarantee that a system will become a powerful hurricane. Wind shear, atmospheric moisture, internal organization, and the position of the circulation all matter. Invest 93C still has to bring those ingredients together. That process is happening now. Satellite imagery and surface observations will become increasingly important as forecasters try to locate the developing center. Once a closed circulation becomes established, the situation could evolve quickly. If the system becomes a tropical storm, official advisories will provide a forecast track and intensity. If Hawaii enters the potential wind threat area, tropical storm or hurricane watches could eventually be considered. A watch does not mean dangerous conditions are guaranteed. It means that they are possible within the specified period. A warning carries a stronger message that those conditions are expected. As of this stage of the developing situation, preparation is more important than prediction. People do not need to panic, but waiting until the wind is already increasing is not a good strategy either. Residents should know where emergency supplies are. They should make sure flashlights and batteries are available. Phones and portable power banks should be charged. Loose outdoor objects should be secured before winds increase. Vehicles should have fuel. People who depend on medication should avoid waiting until the last minute to refill essential prescriptions. Families should also think about what they would do during a prolonged power outage. Visitors should pay close attention to local warnings. Tourists may not be familiar with Hawaii's flood zones, mountain roads, ocean hazards, or emergency procedures. Conditions can vary dramatically from one side of an island to another. A sunny hotel area does not necessarily mean nearby mountains or beaches are safe. Ocean conditions deserve special attention. If high surf warnings are issued, people should stay away from dangerous shorelines. Watching giant waves from rocks or seawalls can be extremely risky. One unexpected wave can reach much farther inland than the previous ones. Drivers should also avoid flooded roads. Water covering a roadway can hide damage or strong currents, and rapidly rising streams can turn dangerous in minutes. For now, Invest 93C remains a developing system. There is still time for the forecast to change. The center could organize farther east. It could organize farther west. The system could strengthen more quickly than expected, or atmospheric conditions could limit its development. Its eventual track could take the core of the storm closer to Hawaii, or it could keep the strongest winds farther offshore. All of those possibilities remain important, but uncertainty should not be confused with absence of risk. That is perhaps the most important message right now. Forecasters do not yet know exactly what Invest 93C will become, but they know enough to say that Hawaii should pay attention. A combination of stronger winds, dangerous surf, heavy rain, flash flooding, and even elevated wildfire danger before the storm arrives could create a complicated weather situation across the islands. And this could unfold over several days, rather than in one sudden moment. Friday may look very different from Saturday. Saturday may look very different from Sunday. Each new satellite image and each new forecast cycle will help narrow the possibilities. So the story of Invest 93C is still being written. The system does not yet have a famous name. It does not yet have a clear landfall point, and it may never become the kind of major hurricane that dominates national headlines. But that does not mean the threat should be ignored. For millions of residents and visitors across Hawaii, the smartest approach is simple. Watch the official forecasts. Prepare before conditions deteriorate. Stay away from dangerous surf. Be ready for power outages and flooding. And do not assume that a line on one weather model represents the final outcome. Over the next few days, we will learn whether Invest 93C becomes Tropical Storm Lala, another named storm, or a system that remains less organized than expected. More importantly, we will learn exactly how close its core comes to the Hawaiian Islands. Until then, Hawaii is watching the Pacific, and the Pacific is giving everyone a reason to pay attention.